All right, so let's get started here. So we're going to talk about Microsoft Excel, and specifically we're going to be looking at formulas here in Excel. We're going to focus on using some basic formulas that uh, are tend to be very straightforward. There's going to be a couple other ones and a few other videos that we'll use, but these tend to be some of the most straightforward ones. The ones we're going to go over are the most common, the kind that you're going to use most frequently, but there are many other formulas that we can use. So let's hop into this. So we've got a table full of data here. A bunch of different stuff that we can take a look at. You can see this should look very familiar from some previous labs. Down here on the bottom, I just have you can see the totals, just are sums using the sum formula. So in a lot of cases, you've already used there are a few formulas that you have already used. So at any rate, we are going to go ahead and get started with all of these formulas that I have set up over here. I have these little notes to myself to kind of help me go through and remind me what we're going to be doing with them. But I'm going to walk you through each of those hopefully pretty quickly. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the count formula, and the idea is that as I have my note to myself, we're going to use count on B3 to B12. So B3 all the way down to B12. So so there's a couple different ways we can do this. Once you get used to the formulas, you can just go ahead and type them in. You just put an equal sign and then start typing your formula. But what we can do to kind of get us started here is we can go ahead and we'll set up our some formulas or use some functions over here. So I'm going to come up to this. I'll come up to this auto sum up here and come down to more functions, and that'll give us a list. And like I said, what you'll see is some of the more commonly used functions to show up at the beginning. But you can also do a search here and to come up with some different things. So these are all the formulas that use the word count in some way, shape, or form. So we're actually going to use the count function. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that one and then click OK. And what you can see is count is going to give us it's going to give us some values, and we can put in as many values as we want, or we can put them in as a range. You'll see it already is defaulted into a range, so I'm just going to delete that out, and we'll go ahead and put that range. We'll put that range back in. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this little chart button, and what that's going to allow me to do is come over here and select the range that I want to use. Once I've selected that range, I can come back over and click on that chart button again, and it goes ahead and plugs that range in for me. So what you can actually see right now is based on that range, it's giving me a value down here. So the count function specifically is counting the number of cells, as it says right here, counts the number of cells in a range that contain numbers. So I selected all of this stuff, and you can see if we count the number of cells that were in the range, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There were 10 of them, but 2 of them don't have anything in them, and 1 of them was words, not numbers. So there are in fact only 7 cells that have have numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and sure enough, it gives me the value that I was expecting. So count, it's a very handy function. But sometimes you want to count to see just if there's something in the cell. It doesn't matter if it's a number or anything else, and that's where the count A function comes into play. So we're going to do the exact same. We're going to use the exact same thing, except this time I'm just going to go ahead and type in my function name, followed by parentheses, and then I'm going to select the same range of cells as I did before, close off my parentheses, and hit enter. And you'll notice this time it comes up with the number 8 instead, because it's counting that Jan as a cell because it's not empty. So count A will count cells that are not empty, and count will only count cells if they have numbers in it. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to switch over to the COUNTIF function. So again, we'll come back over and set this one up using the selecting the function from here. So COUNTIF, double clicked on it. So now for COUNTIF, you'll see that these are both bold. So if they have bold parameters over here, that means that they're going to be required. So we have to put in a range first. So in this case, let's see here, so let me cancel out of this real quick, make sure to figure out which cells are. So I'm looking at the same cells, B3 to B12, and I want any cells that are greater than 5,000. So let's go ahead and set that back up real quick. So more functions, count if. So we're going to have our same cells. And for the criteria, we want it to be greater than 5,000. So I go ahead and click OK, and you'll see that it comes back with 3. There are 3 cells here where the value is greater than 5,000. And if you look through, sure enough, you can see that for yourself. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to do sum if. So it's going to be this very similar. Sum if, we're going to do this for the same cells, the same cell range. And this, again, the cells are going to have to be greater than 5,000. So we'll go ahead and set this up one more time. Look for that function, sum if. And so in this case, we're going to get our range. So I'm going to go ahead and just select that. Notice that I didn't even have to click on the chart. You can just go ahead and select the range as is. And the criteria is that, again, needs to be greater than 5,000. So sum range is not bold, so it means it's not required. So we don't have to necessarily use that. So when it's all said and done, it only adds up the cells where, again, the cell was greater than 5,000. Adds those up, and that's our total. So max and min are much more straightforward. So max is going to find the biggest number, or the biggest value in that range. So I'm selecting the same range, and I get the highest number, which is the total, which makes sense. And then gotta start with an equal sign. And then for the min, it's going to find the smallest number. So I'm going to use the exact same range, close off my parentheses, and hit enter, and we get the smallest number in the range. All right. So the last function that we're going to talk about in this video is the sum function. You've used the sum function before, but for the most part, you've used it just to go ahead and select an entire, or you could select an entire range and just go ahead and run it that way. So for the sake of that, I'm going to go ahead and do sum, and then I'm going to select all of my numbers in here to select my to get my total, which I can, and that works fine. But another way that we can go about this is I could select all these numbers, and I can come up to, I believe it is formulas, and I can actually define a name for this table. So I'm going to call this Taiga, and then I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Oh, that name already exists. So I'm going to cancel this, and I'm going to go to my name manager, and you'll see that Taiga already exists. So that's from B3 to D11. So this is B4 to D11 or D12. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and use this one instead, so you can see where it is here. So it's going to go from, we're going to go from here down to here. Oh, but it keeps adding to it. So let's start over again. So we'll select just these cells. So we're going to add these cells up right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and put a check mark just to save that, and then close it. So now I'm going to come over here, and so I selected the wrong one now. So I'm going to go ahead and do that one more time. So I'm going to add up all of these cells right here so we can see what our total is. And you'll notice that when I selected those cells, it went ahead and put in the name of the table because I already have a named table with that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and here's my total. And just to show you that the total does in fact match, these are the totals for all of the cells, or for all of the rows, and then this is the total of all of these totals altogether. So this is the grand total, if you will, and you can see that it does in fact match what's in B20. So everything matches, and we're good to go. So there's a crash course in formulas. So we're going to go ahead and practice this in your lab, and we'll see how this pans out.